Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back. America's Heroes Group Roundtable, Mental Health Matters with our partner, NAMI, Contra, Costa. Today is Saturday, October 7th, 2023. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, National Disability, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Arnold Productions. And we have a partner with us, Gigi Crowder, the executive director of NAMI, Contra, Costa in California. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness and Advocacy group founded by family members with people of mental illness. Discussion today is going to be healing through music and Fred Hammond's concert, A Time to Heal, From Pain to Purpose. That was presented by NAMI Contra Costa that just happened last weekend. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about this concert you had. So you had Fred Hammond, mega star in gospel music. If you don't know, if you're not familiar with Fred Hammond, he's a mega star in gospel music. He has a successful recording career, goes back some 25 years or so. Over those years, he won 4 Stellar Awards, 6 Dove Awards, like 13 Grammys, 13 Grammy nominations, 1 win in 2008. He won the Grammy once in 2008. And he had albums you might be familiar with. Love Unstoppable is one of my favorites. So how did you put this together, and what was the purpose of the concert? Because it had a special purpose that you wanted to create with this concert.
We definitely did. I've been partnering with the faith community in Alameda County probably about 10 years now, and we had titled it From Pain to Purpose. And we recognize at NAMI Contra Costa that many times when people are experiencing mental health challenges or their families are supporting a loved one, they most often will turn to their faith community for support. And then I started personally digging a little deeper into what is it about the faith community that supports people. And I think it's that experience that many experience when they go in on a Sunday morning. We usually set the atmosphere, I'll say it that way, with music. And so I started paying attention to the type of music that I listen to when I'm having a difficult time. And usually for me, it has been because in addition to doing mental health work, I'm on the social justice. I do a lot of social justice work on behalf of those impacted by mental illness. And for me, it's always been no weapon formed against me shall prosper. That's one of my favorite Fred Hammond songs. And so when we start doing a little mini survey, we recognize that individuals, not unlike myself, do turn to music when they're having a difficult time. And our little mini survey in the Faith Center I was working with, Fred Hammond came out to be, he and Marvin Sapp, one of the 2 individuals that have songs that people kind of use as daily affirmations. And so we thought that if we could come together and have that type of a healing, because mental health dollars were paying for this, so it couldn't be a gospel concert, but it could be a healing event. And so we were able to secure the funds and sponsors, and it took us a couple of months to get a date put in place with Mr. Hammond and his team. But once we got it, it was, one of the most probably transformational events that I've ever held, because individuals came the first day for a workshop where he actually shared testimony and gave some praise teams and worship teams some insights on why he created the music, what kind of space, and some kind of even technology around how you line up the music to meet the need and what chords you should use if you're really trying to evoke emotion for people. And then the next day was open to everyone, and it was a beautiful experience.
Wow, the science behind using chords to affect emotion, that's really powerful. Now, when you met him, what was your first impression of Fred Hammond?
I was overwhelmed because I actually asked him, can I really touch you so I can make sure this dream that I had of bringing you out here has really been realized? Because when we started with the idea, I'm a big dreamer. And so when I first presented it to the funders, we weren't sure if we'd get approval, but it's a community-defined strategy. A lot of times people use terminology like evidence-based practices, and there's a lot of science behind it and a lot of research. But in some of our BIPOC communities, we've had just as much success with community-defined strategies of healing. And that worship experience, I'll call it that, with him on Sunday when he called men up to the stage and had them turn around and sing to the women. It was so impactful. There were tears, there were breakthrough, and the conversations that I had with people after the event was, we need to do this more often. After going through COVID, we haven't had choirs in the same way, and we haven't had kind of like those revivals that you'd have at church, because people really haven't started gathering in the church that we utilize. That was the most people they've had, since COVID at one time. So
Wow.
I think I was, I was starstruck, but he was so human and so able to connect, so personable that and he calls himself Uncle Fred now. So by the time he got there, it felt very nurturing.
Wow, and you got to appreciate the fact that somebody of that magnitude has the time. He's been around for some years. It's not like he's a young spring chicken, but he's been around for a long time. But he's still going out and hit hard to go and share information. And like you mentioned, he gave a workshop. Like how many artists that will do that, give a workshop for people to attend where you can actually, one-on-one and share information and help people heal and help others heal.
Yeah, he said it was the first time. He wasn't familiar with the concept that, I kind of came up with, but remember I was trying to utilize the terminology we need to use to make sure that people understood this was to improve mental health and emotional well-being. So the workshop had to be designed in such a way, and he and his team kept coming back, now, what exactly?
Wow.
But as soon as he came out and started sharing his testimony and was able to connect people to his pain and how he personally used music to feel better, then I recognized, he had the template already himself. He didn't need, me to coach him about what schizophrenia, bipolar, or any of that was. He actually was sharing a testimony of an individual, meaning himself, who lived with PTSD.
Wow. I'm sure you got a lot of information out of you, though, because, you're the expert in a lot of these areas. How do you use music to heal in your everyday life with the people that you impact? Not so much personally, but people that you impact.
Yeah, when individuals call us looking for support, sometimes because NAMI is non-clinical supports for individuals, we can give referrals, but you're not going to see a licensed clinical social worker that same day. So we often go through conversations like, well, what do you do to make you feel better when you're having a difficult time? And a lot of times when people call us, and we're one of the nonprofit agencies that have already acknowledged that faith plays a significant role throughout our NAMIs across the nation, we have a faith net. So when I ask them that question, often they want us to pray with them, and we will. We'll pray with individuals, and then we'll say, now, we're going to have to get off the phone with you. Some people say that they pray on their own and they feel better. Some people say they read Holy Scripture, they feel better. Some people say they take walks in nature. Some people practice other things like yoga. But when I say to individuals, what helps me sometimes is when I listen to some inspirational music or gospel music, they say, oh, yeah, me too. So sometimes you have to remind people that they feel better as long as they're not listening to the blues or listening to songs that get them stuck in the pain. Most people have recognized that music can kind of be a healing source. I think even, for our educational systems, we all mostly had to take a music class in elementary school. Historically, I don't know if the funds are there now, but it's because, music is science. Music is math. It can be supportive of foreign language. It's history. It's all those things. Of course, we know it's an art form, but when music gets in you, it really gets in you. It's the only form of information that travels from the right hemisphere of your brain to the left uninterrupted. So when it gets in you, it really gets in you. And so many of us have affirmations, but the music kind of pounds it in there when you're saying we're blessed in the city, we're blessed when we come and when we go. Some of Fred Hammond's lyrics actually remind you you're not doing this alone.
Well, I think that's really impactful that people to understand that there's even been studies that show that when you play music to plants actually grow better when they're around music, and certain types of music actually interact with certain animals better than others. And kids' brains develop better when they're exposed to learning how to play music. Which is really impactful. So what was your favorite moment in the concert itself?
I would have to say it was for me when he called the men up and they started singing, and they were singing we were in Oakland, so they sung a song created in Oakland, Oh Happy Day. And so when they started singing that, and when he started talking about the church we were in was Bishop Ernestine Ring. She was one of the first African-American faith leaders, and at one time for Ebony Magazine, she was voted as one of the 50 most influential faith leaders. And because it's in the middle of Oakland and now a very, urban area, when you come up to the church itself, it's beautiful, but you're seeing a lot of the blight that's now taken over. And he was saying, you guys got me in the hood. But he said, let me speak into the men who might live in this neighborhood. Let me speak into their lives about what's possible. And that, he didn't have to sing at that point, because once he started talking and I looked around the room and I saw him share his story, and people like chains were falling off of them because, sometimes when you get a testimony from someone who for you feels unreachable, like you would never, I heard people say, I never thought I'd ever be this close to him. His music has gotten me through some difficult times. When I saw like a softening of the men and like they were released from something they were carrying that was heavy, that was what was most impactful for me.
Wow. And did the guys know how to sing when they got up on stage?
Not all of them, but that's why we had that day before. We wanted to make sure even the worship and the praise teams that are, kind of rusty because they had not been back and practicing in that way, that they were getting some of the tools. And so he was, he gave some pointers to a couple of people about, how they could improve. He said sometimes choir directors have to, be more honest about whether a person carries a skill set to be in the choir, and that there's other roles they could play at the church. And then, people thinking they're a tenor when they're a soprano, people who want to do solos but don't necessarily have the gift of song. So he made, he was humorous as well, and that was fun. And everyone walked away. We even gave away certificates for the people who participated so that they could say they participated in that workshop.
Do you think you could take this as concert experience? Because I've heard of a concert, although it kind of doesn't make sense that I've never heard of it before, because it almost seems like an obvious fit. I mean, you don't go to concerts to get depressed. You don't go to music concerts to, waste time. You go there because you want to have fun. It's going to be an experience. Yeah. There's going to be if it's a person that you really, really, really like, it could be a mega concert where there's tens of thousands of people, or it could just be a concert in a small spot, a hole in the wall that has your favorite band. They can be life-changing events. So would you want to do something like this that's specifically themed for healing, emotional healing, particularly other parts of the country?
Definitely. And this was, of course, the first, and like I said earlier, I had to convince the funders that it does connect to mental health, that, it wasn't an evidence-based practice, but if you give me time, I can prove it is. And so that this was the first. I'm already in conversations with another person who I particularly love, who I've done a little bit of work before at the beginning of COVID. I was on a panel that she facilitated from her. She's the first lady, but she recognized mental health as being important in supporting individuals to make decisions about vaccination. So I'll just drop the name. Erica Campbell. So I'm trying to, I saw such a powerful move with the men. I thought to myself, wow, when you walk into most churches now, there's more women than men, so we need to have that as well. And so I've reached out to her management team to see if we can get her to come for our next round hopefully in February. So we'll see. And of course, if this gets the type of attention I feel like it should, because why Alameda County, why Contra Costa County? There's been a lot of pain in those cities, and so trying to bring back something. Sometimes people say faith-based services, and I'll say hope-based, because that's ultimately where we're trying to get people to feel more optimistic about their future. So I'll say hope-based services, and that's what we were successful in pulling that off last weekend.
Why do you think there is more? Do you think there's more pain in the cities, in your areas, than there was, say, maybe 20 years ago, 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, and I think individuals from younger ages are actually experiencing the pain. So that's what's so, unfortunate for me. We've had some real challenges in the northern part of California in recent months. I mean, we had our challenges with law enforcement and released scandalous, racialized text messages. And then we also had, in Oakland, California, a beloved police chief who was terminated, and now he's trying to get his job back. And, I had to hire security there because the neighborhood, of course, we had to worry about people not getting their cars broken into. So, yeah, there's a sinking feeling in my heart sometimes, being born and raised in Oakland, when I drive into the city and I see the issues with the unsheltered. So in California, the governor is working on a new legislation that'll be on the ballot. Well, he would take some of the funds from mental health and put them in substance use. And some family members in the mental health are like, oh, don't do that. We don't have enough treatment services. But I do know that there's individuals who did get treated early enough, so they're self-medicating. So we have to do more to address the needs of those who have substance abuse illnesses.
Do you think that there's misallocation of funds to the extent where maybe there's maybe too much money and ineffective things and not enough money really put into preventative things like mental health? One of the things that's happening here in Chicago is that the mayor, this particular mayor, he is actually taking a stance on trying to fund mental health, and he even got a lot of heat because they accused him of being a defunded the police guy. In reality, he's just trying to make police work smarter rather than harder, and then using those funds instead of just hiring more cops and investing in more hardware for the police, using that money to do preventative things so you don't have the police having to answer mental health calls.
Yes, and so you may recall on this show we introduced 988, California's bill is named after a young man, Miles Hall, who was killed, as we push now for non-police response for mental health. So I think every city, so your legislative leader in Chicago is going around the right track, because it should be about prevention. I'm not interested in having more psych emergency beds. I'm interested in going into the schools and going, the places where you find young people. In most counties, their juvenile justice system, 60 to 70% of the young people there have a diagnosed mental illness. Not, they may be living with this. No, it's diagnosed. So should they be getting treatment versus being criminalized? Couldn't we have caught it at an earlier age? Because we know that trauma is a precursor for some of the mental health challenges that people later experience. You have a person who's traumatized, and then you put them in a restrictive environment, and then you wonder why they create more problems and end up in our adult jail systems. It's because they didn't get it addressed at an early age. And I actually feel like music and some of the work I did while working for Alameda County with hip-hop therapy is one of the preventative ways. You may have great difficulty with getting some youth to talk about their feelings just from regular conversation, but if you could get them to rap about it, then, they're more comfortable. It's a more comfortable environment for them, and they share through music. And we know that some of the youth that were having a difficult time, once they got connected to the hip-hop therapy program, actually formed connection with other youth, and then some of the bad choice behavior was eliminated for many of them.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty amazing because, I mean, you don't, oftentimes rap and hip hop gets a bad rap, because they say that it has like all these negative undertones and negative imagery and negative words and promotes violence and things like that. And you also see a lot of violence. We just recently in the news, a big story nowadays is, 20 years after his death, Tupac's killer is apprehended.
Right.
A famous rap star. And remember, that's my generation, two of your biggest stars dying almost back to back, Biggie Smalls and Tupac, but at the end of the day, you still have to look at the fact that, music got those guys out of bad situations. Their lives would have been totally different if they didn't have music as an outlet. And people's lives if they actually helped. I mean, people like Tupac's song, Brenda Got a Baby. I know people that were going, young mothers who were teenagers who were struggling, who decided to have their children. When Brenda had got a baby, that spoke to them and gave them hope and helped them become successful mothers.
And I do recall that many of the from a different era. So I do remember the first hip hop songs or rap music that I heard were things like, wasn't it Curtis Blow, Don't Push Me, I'm Close to Bed?
That was it wasn't Curtis Blow, but no, that song you're talking about, yeah. I forget the name of it. I think World Class Wrecking Crew. No, it wasn't World Class Wrecking Crew. That's another Dr. Dre. I forget. Yeah, I know you're talking about that. Yeah.
But in that era, a lot of the hip hop songs at that time were actually identifying challenges in the community and sharing it. And so it was more conscious rap than it was negative influence rap. But even many of the individuals, like you said, who started with the negative influence, they were selling drugs, and then they switched over to music, and that was their dream, to not stay in that life, which almost guarantees you will eventually go to jail or, destroy your community. And 50 years later, it's still relevant, and I think there has been a move back to some of the music. I mean, I get disappointed when I see the young girls that some of the music they're coming out with and some of the provocative, But I do think that there's some value. There was one my sons used to listen to, and I knew I was in trouble when my oldest of my twin sons was listening to Kanye rap, and his number one song that made him was College Dropout. And I was like, son, cut that off. And then, a year later, after he's in college, he's like, Mom, I'm coming home. I don't want to do this. I want to do music. I was like, oh, boy, I saw this coming. Should have took that out of his CD player.
Kanye West is probably not the first person you want to take advice from. If you look at his track record, look what
Right.
But I do see hope in using music as therapy and as in creating more venues like this across the country, because I think it is needed, and well, you proved it. It was successful. It's something that people got something out of. I would think that was also an economically or financially successful event that you guys had.
Oh, yeah. It was once I was clear and had recovered the upfront funds that the state, which, they didn't tell me to pay it back. I know some people had purchased it to attend, but I was like, don't hold up the line. Just let them come on in. If they're here, they need to be here. And then I started making calls to people who I knew could not afford the nominal cost of $50, but they couldn't afford it. I was like, show up and just tell them at the front desk you're a special guest of Gigi Crowder and come on in. Yeah.
Wow. Now I'm thinking we need to bring them out to Harvey, Illinois, or something like that.
I would love to do that. Yes, for sure.
That'd be awesome. It's a great idea. I really think that was something that. I mean, how did you come up with that idea? Though, what made you disconnect and say, okay, I'm gonna get an artist, and then raise money, and then get a venue. Like you're a concert promoter now, basically.
Well, and they were calling me a promoter. I'm saying, I'm not a promoter. Don't put me in that category. But I guess on all the contracts that I signed under the letter of promoter. I'll be honest and say God gave it to me. I was dealing with some heavy, not personally, but through work. It just seemed like so many people were having such a difficult time. Young people were dying at the hands of law enforcement, and it just was like, wow, let me start listening to my music. And then I'll say, as Biggie Small said, I had a dream, and maybe I'll say Martin Luther King, I had a dream. And then I made a phone call to a local rapper. He may be a little better known across, California, Mr. Fab, and he acknowledged he lived with mental health challenges, and he said he would
Wow.
come and talk to a younger crowd, and he calls his thug therapy. So, so I just saw the opportunity for him. I said, but I could get him for that amount. How much can I get from Fred Hammond? So I kept pushing. And I'm still going to work with Mr. Fab, but I think for the times and what we were trying to accomplish, kicking it off with Fred Hammond was more important.
Gigi Crowder, I really appreciate your time. You give us a lot of information and some great ideas. I think it was really helpful that you did that, and also hope that you can do it again, and maybe share your strategies with other people on how to do that for other people around the country, particularly churches. I think churches are going to be really receptive about that. We maybe need to talk about this again, or maybe even do a separate podcast on what you did and how you did it.
I'd love to. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So for our listening audience, thank you for listening to us on every Saturday, 4 to 6 p.m. And if you have any questions for America's Heroes Group, make sure that you give us the information, but check us out on our YouTube station, on our YouTube channel, and also on our Facebook page. You can also reach out to us at our phone number. That number is, as always, 312-803-2618. That's 312-803-2618. And also email us at info@americashg.org. That's info@americashg.org. Let us know what you're thinking about so we can make our shows better, and also get to the topics that you want to hear about, because that's really important, what makes us thrive. And if you can, donate to our show. We're a nonprofit 501c3. And we'll see you again next week. Be safe, be healthy, and of course, as always, be good Americans. Thank you for your time.